Y'all know what it is, what it do, what it do. It is your boy, Who Dat Davis here for you. And as always, if you don't know, you will know that over here we bleed black and gold until we are dead and cold. Thank y'all for joining me this morning for another edition of the B&G Breakdown Podcast. I gotta get my hat on this morning. Y'all know how I like to do things. Every time we come live, we gotta rep the Saints in some way, somehow, some fashion. We already got the logo up there, but we gotta get the hat right here. Good morning, everybody. Whether you're from down there in New Orleans, with the heart of the Saints, or anywhere across the country, even down there over there in the Western California, you know, the same California where the Saints are going to be hosting some practices, but for the second year in a row, well, allow Saints to attend those training camp practices. I guess they don't have. I guess they don't have much love over there for us Saints fans. So you're over there in the West, but hey, to each their own, right? But like I said, good morning to everybody. I hope y'all having a fantastic morning. I hope, and I appreciate everybody who's choosing to choose me as their voice as they go into work this morning, as they get their 8 hours in to get them money and do what they need to do to take care of their family, their friends, their loved ones. Do what they got to do and handle business. I respect that. I appreciate y'all filing in. I see we got OG down there in the comment section. We got Teflon, the mod father. Hey, what's going on? Hey, the Don. Hey, look, as a wrestling fan, the Don of NXT was a fan of mine. But the whole concept of a Don, look, I love that stuff. And we got my own, I got my own Don, y'all. Hey, look, we got my own Don in the comment section. Love to see it. Hey, Don, check this out. I need more mods though. So if you want to be the Don around here, hey, let me know. Let's talk business. We're good to see you either way, man. So as well as the other people that slowly filing in here. Look, this morning we got a lot to talk about, but before we get into all that, we all know that those boys down there on Airline Drive, they're getting ready to, as to their social media posts yesterday across all their platforms, they're getting ready to debut a new alternative helmet for the New Orleans Saints this season. And it is going to be a fun time. I am currently looking forward to it. The New Orleans Saints were needing a update. They were needing a change for the longest minute now. You know, they last debuted a alternative helmet. It was a black alternative helmet, and you know how that went in terms of pairing it with their, you know, their white and gold alternative uniforms. Color rush uniforms. Excuse me. It didn't turn out very well, and the record that they currently have while wearing that helmet uniform combination kind of speaks for itself. I don't think they've won a single game with that combination. It is absolutely putrid. The gods were telling us something that day and every day since. But this new debut of an alternative helmet, if it happens to drop while we're live here on the BG Breakdown Podcast, I'm gonna make sure I get it to you, you know, live. Make sure we can all react together. You know what I'm saying? So right now. I got my other monitor here. We're gonna be keeping a close eye on all New Orleans Saints social medias to make sure we watch for or if that new breaking news drops. The thing we're all waiting for. A lot of us have speculations already that the new alternative helmet is going to be white and gold. You know, to go with their, you know, the color rush uniforms. If that is the case, then you can guarantee that your boy is going to be copping some merch. You know what I'm saying? Copping some merch with the new helmet. You know, I might get a helmet. I might just set it up here in like a glass case or something, but that's if it's white and gold. I've been waiting for, you know, a helmet like that for a long time. It so has so many other people here in the Who Dat Nation. It's going to be an exciting time. It's another example of this team. This team is ushering in a new era under head coach Kellen Moore, and it is an exciting time to be a New Orleans Saints fan. But with that news being said, speaking of the Saints, let's go ahead and get down with the breakdown. I spoke about a new era of New Orleans Saints football, how we're turning the page. We've already talked about Kellen Moore and what he plans to bring to this offense as a play caller and overall identity, a new culture under head coach Kellen Moore. There's also a changing of the guard, so to speak, with a defensive philosophy, going from a 4-3 to a 4-2-5 nickel back to a 3-4 under the defensive coordinator Brandon Staley. We've had 3-4s in the past, and honestly, it worked out well, but I don't see at the time why we changed from it. Now, obviously, for a while, it worked out, right? because since 2017, all the way, I would say, 2020, the New Orleans Saints have had one of the better defensive teams in the National Football League during that span when they switched to a 4-2-5. But now it's time for, to get back to what the Saints are predominantly known for. Stopping the run, having some fun, getting at the quarterback, and keeping eyes on the ball, hats to the ball, all that type of stuff. That's what defensive coordinator Brandon Staley is going to be bringing. And he's got a lot of pieces to work with, as does Kellen Moore with their new 2025 rookie draft class. Now, this rookie draft class hosts a number of good starters, potential contributors for the New Orleans Saints in terms of, and they fit what each guy wants to do on either side of the football. It's not just like, and it's more than just a scheme fit, right? The New Orleans Saints have been searching for that magic since 2017 in terms of hitting on most of their draft picks. That 2017 class will forever go down in history as one of the best draft classes in the National Football League for a good reason. That draft class has propelled Saints to numerous years of success. It's given them to multiple playoff appearances. It's gotten them to a NFC championship game. We're not going to talk about the ending there, all right? We're not going to talk about that. But what we will talk about is how good that draft class was and how difficult it was to have any moniker of similar success in terms of finding that next great draft class. But the New Orleans Saints, they might have something here with these guys. There's just something about them, not just how they carry themselves on the field. It's also how they carry themselves off the field. We've always talked about, if you love this city of New Orleans, the city's going to love you right back. Doesn't matter how bad of a player you are. If you show up, you show out for these guys, we're going to be 10 toes down behind you. I think that's all the true with these certain guys here in this 2025 draft class, because they have not been shy about going out here on social media, going out in the day-to-day, interacting with the community around New Orleans, repping the black and gold. They stepping on anyone. They checking anyone who has anything to say otherwise about it. It's stuff you love to see out of your young players as you're trying to set a new culture for this team. And we're going to get into all these guys, especially, certain guys who I believe, or a certain guy who I believe is the face of this 2025 draft class. And no, I don't believe it's Tyler Shough. As much as I love Tyler Shough so far, he still has a lot of questions he has to answer, but I do respect how he's been carrying himself so far his first NFL offseason, going into his first NFL training camp, from, checking, the St. Brown brothers on their podcast when they try to disrespect the Saints food, like the city's food, like the culinary culture, to going down into New Orleans. He's actually trying some of the food instead of going to Chipotle, or like a certain broken down vehicle whose name shall no longer be mentioned here unless absolutely necessary, to actually just embracing the city. He's endearing himself to everything that is New Orleans, that makes this culture, this city, as great as it is today. I respect the hell out of Tyler Shough for that. He's carrying himself differently than what we've had other certain quarterbacks, come in and do over the last 3-4 seasons. The next best thing was Jameis Winston. We all know how good J-Bo is in terms of, loving the city. But no, I don't think he's the face of this team as of right now. I think that moniker goes to a guy who's on the opposite side of the ball. And I can't believe I'm going to be saying this as a Texas Longhorns fan. As a college football fan, this guy, it turns the stomach. You know what I'm saying? It turns the stomach to have to say this, but he's no longer with my long hated rival in Oklahoma. He's with the black and gold, and as always, I have to stand 10 toes down behind my guys. They're going to rep this team. They're going to be the guy that brings energy and everything else. I have to give them their respect. So with that being said, I believe the new phase of 2025 is linebacker Danny Stutsman. Check this out. He's bringing that old school linebacker mentality, everybody. The fourth round draft pick out of 2025, Oklahoma linebacker Danny Stutzman. Now, this guy is a old, when I say old school, I mean old school. He brings that energy, not to mention he brings intensity on the football field, and he brings back the love of having a and looking forward to a rival game. Now, since he came out of high school as a wide receiver, he was his first season under Oklahoma, he led his team in special teams tackles. He was so good that he ended up winning a starting job on the defensive side of the ball. And since then, he has never looked back. In 2021, he had 38 tackles, 1 sack to force fumbles in 10 games. His first 10 games as a redshirt freshman. He's also been a guy that's been all across interviews. He's talked about his game, his how he plays the game, how he views the game, how he studies. This guy, Danny Stutzman, was a guy who I hated. You know what I'm saying? If you're a Longhorns fan, right, that one game out of the year you always look forward to, it's the Red River Rival Week against the Oklahoma Sooners. This guy, Danny Stutzman, looked forward to that just as much. It's nothing but hate, hate, hate. We want to beat the guy across from us. We want to hold that trophy at the end of the game, have them bragging rights for the next year. It's been going on for the longest time, and it's going to continue. But during these last 4 seasons, we've had their number, they've had our number. When they've had our number, it's because Danny Stutzman's on the other side, making life difficult for my boy Quinn Ewers. Making life hell for my boy Sam Ellinger before him, and he has instilled a culture of intensity with the Oklahoma Sooners. It's going to be hard for even my boy Arch Manning. He's getting ready to cement himself as QB1 for my Longhorns this fall for the college season. So that's going to be something to look forward to. Danny Stutzman was that dude, so much so that in 2022, the dude had a starting role in the defense, and he never looked back. Like I said, 2022, they had over 120 total tackles, that which led the Big 12 guys. That is serious stuff. And you got a lot of good linebackers in the Big 12 conference at that time. He had 3 sacks and 2 interceptions on the year. There was one interception, was an impressive one-hand snag when he was playing in zone coverage. Zone coverage is the one thing is that he is well known for. We'll get into what his pros and cons are here in a second. We're going over what he's done in his totality. In 2023, he returned for his senior season, but at that time he was a top prospect for the 2024 NFL draft, but he wanted to come back. He wanted to finish things out proper. In 2023, he came back and he was a top 5 linebacker in the nation. He was a semifinalist for the best linebacker award. It left a bad taste in his mouth, so he ran it back. In 2024, he got even better. I don't know how you get better than that, but somehow we got better. In 2024, this guy was a consensus All-American, and he was runner-up now. He was runner-up, a finalist for the nation's best linebacker award. He came second only to Jahad Campbell, who now finds himself in Philadelphia with the Philadelphia Eagles. But this guy was close. It was almost I would say it was almost a 2-1 margin that he lost by with the terms of the votes. But what Danny Stutzman brings is not only just an old school downhill thumper, It gives you great, great instincts to play in zone coverage. He knows how to keep his hat around the football. He has a nose for the football. One of his best traits is, in terms of stopping the run, sifting through the trash. You saw a couple of his highlight tapes right there. Danny Stutzman knows how to, sort through blocks, shed blocks. He knows how to get. He led this, tackles for loss, things of this nature. Danny Stutzman is a guy who called himself the cracker with juice. You look over his social media, his Instagram page. This guy is a cracker with juice. He is a demon. He is ready to embrace the rivalry between the Saints and the Atlanta Falcons. This guy is already ready to call himself the next great daddy of the Atlanta Falcons. You just love to see it, man. You just love to see it. And that's just why I believe Danny Stutzman is the face of the 2025 rookie class, because he has been posted and treated as such. I would say even more so than Tyler Shough has to this point. Now Danny Stutzman has an uphill battle a little bit in terms of trying to find his way to a starting linebacker position this season, because not only is Demario Davis coming back, he still has to try to beat out Pete Werner to be Davis's new partner in crime. Now, we know Pete Werner, coming out of Ohio State, his first 2 seasons, the guy who looked like he was going to be that next big dude. You know what I'm saying? And I love Pete Werner coming out of Ohio State. Pete Werner was a guy who was really solid, not only just in being an inside linebacker, but during his Ohio State years, they asked him to do a lot, especially when it comes to guarding receivers out of the slot. He had that type of versatility to him. This guy is also a known thumper in the run game. He's able to sort out your shed blocks. Now, what he's not really known for is covering receivers downfield. That's more of a Demario Davis role, and Demario Davis himself is already 35 years old, or about to be 36. So you're not going to see too much of Pete Werner or Danny Stutzman, for that matter. One thing that Danny Stutzman struggles with is turning his back to the football and trying to recover guys downfield. That's not his game. You get him in zone coverage, you get his eyes on the football, he sees ball, he gets ball. One way or another, he's going to get it. Now, ideally, right, the ideal scenario is that Demario Davis retires and you have Pete Werner and Danny Stutzman being the next 2 linebacker duo, which looks like it's trending in that direction, given that they gave Pete Werner an extension, looking like he's going to be part of the plan post Demario Davis. And if that is the case, then I can appreciate the Saints for at least trying to get the next heir apparent to Demario Davis in the locker room. And if they did it with Drew Brees, then we'd be having a whole different conversation of where this team is at right now. But Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton at the time, it was a mess. But as far as the defensive side goes, you can see there's at least a plan in place to try and get Demario Davis as heir apparent in the building to be the next 2 great linebacker duos. Kind of similar to how Levante David and Devin White were for a short period of time before Devin White found himself out the building. It's things like even over in San Francisco with Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw before Greenlaw got himself out the building. I think he's on another team now. These guys have the potential. Now, how much time will Danny Stutzman see on the defensive side of the ball? Remains to be seen. He has. We'll get a better idea of what Danny Stutzman is about when training camp begins and the pads come on. That's when the physicality obviously ramps up. He's able to hit guys, but he's also made a couple of plays already between OTAs and minicamp. He's already proven to be a good coverage defender in zone coverage. He's proven to be a guy that can attack a football when it's in the air or there's a draw, anything like that. He's made a couple of plays already. He's flashed some of that quick sideline to sideline speed, that athleticism, and his instincts to know where the ball is going to be. So Danny Stutzman, look, if you ever see this, As a Texas guy, I can't stand you. Texas will always be better. Always be better. You know what I'm telling you? But as a guy who is now on my team, I rock with you. I'm standing behind you. You got a lot of guys out here, especially on Saints Twitter, that are looking forward to seeing what you do on the field. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of that number though. I want you to have a different number. That 47, it's got a little bad juju, in my opinion. If you guys don't know that, not number 47, since Alex Anzalone has not been the best thing to see on certain guys. You know, John Bostic for a while, when he signed to the Saints, he wore 47. Thought he was going to be great, but didn't really work out that way. There were some other guys that wore 47 that didn't even see the field. You know, it's that bad. You know, so Alex Anzalone is the more or most recent notable guy to wear 47 and actually prove to be, you know, not a liability, at least as far as his first couple of years in the Saints uniform went. His last season, not so much. Kind of fell off, but he found new life over there in Detroit. So I'm happy for my guy. Part of that 17 draft class we just mentioned a little earlier in the show. Uh, but look, it's going to take a lot more than just Denny Sussman either way. You know what I'm saying? But he sets the tone. He sets the identity for what this draft class can be. That old school, head down, eyes up mentality. His ability to just, be an emotional charge for his defense, for his unit. He's clutch in the biggest moments. That's the type of guy you want in your locker room. When things are down, who's that guy that's going to just rejuvenate anybody? Who's going to be that first guy to run downfield when your guy on your unit makes that big play? Who's going to expect more out of you when things look good but can be better? This is the type of guy that Danny Sussman is, the all-time tackling machine, one of the Oklahoma greats as far as I'm concerned. But speaking of Oklahoma in a Red River rival week, I can't talk about Oklahoma without giving even more love to my guys. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I'm a Texas fan. And there is one guy on the offensive side of the ball who deserves just as much love. Now, look, when you have a leader of a rookie draft class, you got to have that guy that's going to be like your protector. You got to have that guy that's going to be like your enforcer. When things go sideways, who's going to stand there and run interference? Who's going to set things in motion? Who's going to be, that tone setter? That big guy that you could cut, that you can count on being, being between you and whatever's trying to accost you, right? And I'm happy to say, look, I'm very, very happy to say that the next guy I'm gonna bring up here is left tackle, my guy, Kelvin Banks.
Jaden Blue on the carry, carrying the ball down to the 10-yard line.
So what you guys saw right there was Laramie Tunsil 2.0. According to many, NFL scouts that made the comparison. That right there was Kelvin Banks Jr., first round draft pick of the New Orleans Saints, ninth overall. He looks to cement himself on the offensive line on that left side as Talisa Fuaga, last year's first round pick, moves over back to his right side. The right side was where Fuaga played during his college season. He was one of the elites there for a reason. Now, he played left tackle last season, because there was some makeshift in the offensive line with Trevor Penning. We'll get into Penning a little later on in another show, but we covered Trevor Penning a little bit, the day before. The expectation of Trevor Penning when it's time for him to show that he can play left guard, or because it's pretty much his last chance. But with Penning going to left guard, it gives Fuaga a chance to get his old groove back at the right side, and it makes this transition for Kelvin Banks to be smoother on the left side of the football. It gives your offensive line a little more continuity overall, and I think that's a really smart move on Kellen Moore's part. It's a common sense move that apparently wasn't so common with guys like Dennis Allen and even Sean Payton for a time, who've always drafted these offensive lineman guys. They've always, loved these guys who have these high profiles, these traits that they believe can be versatile, but they've always played them out of position. Cesar Ruiz is a victim of that, and we'll get into Ruiz later because I have a whole laundry list of things to say about him right now. But he's another victim of being a guy who started his career, his college season in one position, and he has so much success. Then he has to come into the league, a new, more intense animal. He has to learn a completely different position from scratch. He had to rebuild his body, retool his muscle memory. And it took him a while to really get accustomed to that right guard position. Trevor Penning, even though he goes back to the left side, he's done some left guard in college when he was in Northern Iowa, University of Northern Iowa. Then his last season before his declaration for the draft, he played left tackle. So he has some versatility on that left side that he hopes to, recapture some of that fire, recapture some of that magic. But Kelvin Banks Jr., he's a guy that is plug and play. He's ready to start. We would not have had the success that we have had at with the Longhorns this past season without Kelvin Banks anchoring down that left side. When I say this guy is Laramie Tunsil 2.0, I'd say that's a fair comparison, especially if other official NFL scouts and reporters are drawing that similar comparison. Now, Kelvin Banks Jr., he comes in as an instant starter, like I said. He is an elite protector. And all 42 games at left tackle over his 3 seasons with Texas, he's locked over 1,400 pass block snaps, 1,472 to be exact, almost 1,500. And how many sacks he gave up during his entire 3-season start? Only 4. How many did he give up last season in his time with Texas? 1. He gave up only 1, and that 1 technically should not have even been on him. It was on Quinn Ewers. Now, that was a game when Texas was playing the University of Georgia. He gave up a sack to now Atlanta Falcons first round draft pick Jalen Walker. Now, I remember that game like the back of my own hand. That is a game that we should have won for all intents and purposes if Quinn Ewers looked any bit like the starting caliber quarterback that he showed during his earlier campaigns. That was deep within the Longhorn territory. Texas had the ball. They were trying to get out of a third and medium situation. Now, Kelvin Banks had Jalen Walker and Alcatraz. But because there was no receivers up and downfield, he tried to climb up in the pocket. He was kind of late with his decision. It allowed Jalen Walker to get back into play, trip him up for a sack. So that went against Kelvin Banks' stats. And now that was a game you saw earlier in his highlight tape. That was a game to where he played with a bum ankle. midway through his final season, Kevin Banks suffered a mild ankle sprain, and he played through that. It didn't look like he lost much of a step. That's how good Kelvin Banks is. That's how reliable Kelvin Banks is to be able to play through an injury like that, and it looks like it didn't even phase him. We didn't even know about the injury until like after the postseason, college postseason, where it came out that he had a bum ankle and it looked like it was taped up, wrapped up pretty heavy. You could still see that he had elite movement. He had great lateral quickness. And only to give up one sack even after suffering an injury, that's impressive stuff. That is what the New Orleans Saints are getting with that they're getting with Kelvin Banks. Now you can see if you can see my screen here, the Saints have a profile on Kelvin Banks. Now we all know who Laramie Tunsil is. Laramie Tunsil is a guy who was a longtime Texas left tackle, offensive tackle, but he got traded this offseason to the Washington Commanders. He looks to bring a veteran presence, a moniker of success, highly regarded around the league. He helps to shape up that offensive line because, Jaden Daniels got hit a little too often for the liking of his head coach and his offensive coordinator. So they hope to bring a little more stability on that side and overall just get that unit playing at a high level. What you're going to see out of Kelvin Banks, you're going to see a guy who doesn't take any plays off. You're going to see a guy who, if he does make mistakes, you're not going to see it happen for a second or third time. He's quick to learn. He keeps his mouth shut. He keeps his ears open. But when it's time to speak, people around him listen. He was a leader for that offensive side. He was a captain for a reason. Kelvin Banks Jr. is a guy that will fight for his quarterback, whoever it may be. Whether it's in college with Sam Ehlinger or Quinn Ewers, or even now in the NFL level, whether it be Tyler Shough, whether it be Spencer Rattler. And that's the type of mentality that I love out of my guys. When you're down and dirty with those rival teams, when they're trying to get that extra shot in, within a second or two of a whistle being blown, where's the offensive line? Who's going to be the guy that I see rushing across the field, putting a hit on a guy who tried to lay out his quarterback, try to injure his quarterback? That's who Kelvin Banks is. I want to see intensity. I want to see intensity out of my guy every snap, from snap to snap. Now, is he a perfect polished product? No. What he does well in the pass blocking game, he can improve more in the run blocking game. There are times where Kelvin Banks just doesn't hold on to his blocks longer than he should. He's a mover of men. He can easily move 300-plus pounders like they were just, mid-sized linebackers. Turn them inside out, when they try to run outside zone schemes or RPO or gap schemes with Texas. But oftentimes, he doesn't have proper hand placement. When we talk about proper hand placement, now, I'm a defensive guy, so forgive me. But if I'm lining up across Kelvin Banks, and I know it's going to be a run, what I'm going to do, if he gets his hands inside of me, I'm already going to feel that he doesn't have a firm base to really work off of, because his hand placements are a little too far on the outside instead of being here, controlling my movement. So what I'm going to do, especially, there's another note, he doesn't fire off the ball in terms of when it comes to run block. He doesn't fire off the ball as quickly as you would see him do when it's time to get into his passing set. He doesn't fire off the ball. So I'm going to beat him to the punch, quite literally. I'm going to shoot this snap. I'm going to get my hands inside him. And I'm going to make sure that he can't control me here. I'm going to control him here. I'm going to be looking, and I'm going to get him out the way. Even if he is a big body, I'm quicker. I'm faster. I'm going to see this. I'm going to see where this play is going before you have a chance to move me. That's how I am as a defensive guy. That Kelvin Banks Jr., he has to be better about that. You know what I'm saying? If they're going to have any success this season, cementing any type of, decent run game with Alvin Kamara or whoever is going to be, running back two behind him, whether it be Kendre Miller, Devin Neal, Marcus Yarns, whoever. They're going to be looking to that left side, I would say, fairly often because Trevor Penning is known for being a good run blocker. He's shown it during his time at UNI. He's shown it to be fairly consistent whenever he got his chances on the NFL line, whether it be a left tackle or right tackle last season where he was kind of decent. Having a successful run game is going to be paramount. Now, I'm not saying that Kelvin Banks is trash in terms of run blocking. No, I'm saying he's just not consistent enough at this stage, and that's okay. No matter what guy you pick, they're not going to be a polished product. He's NFL ready, but he's not a polished product. And now it's up to Kellen Moore and his new offensive line coach to get him playing to his potential. But rest assured, when it comes to blocking, when it comes to pass blocking, when it comes to fighting for your quarterback, Kelvin Banks is your guy. And I spoke earlier about Danny Stutsman embracing a rival week. Kelvin Banks is just the same. He hated Oklahoma just as much as Danny Stutsman hated Texas. And you've seen that pretty often if you're a fan of either team and they're going head-to-head. It was a great matchup. It was great to see. And now you got both guys who were respectively one of the best players on either team in one locker room and under one banner, under one black and gold. That's that intensity, that's that leadership, and that's that playmaking ability that you see, that gives so many Saints fans, including me, some hope of what this team could be. Not so much this season, but 2026 and beyond. I want to see how many games can Kelvin Banks start. Can he lock down that left side like Talise Fuaga did in his rookie campaign? Can he play all 17 games? Can he have some monetary success at the NFL level in terms of pass blocking? Because he's going to be going up. So he's going to be going up against some pretty intense competition, whether it be against Tampa, against Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, or maybe Levante David off the edge, or maybe even the San Francisco 49ers with Joey Bosa, and the list goes on. Hell, the biggest one's probably going to be Atlanta against Jaylen Walker and James Pierce Jr., their second first-round draft pick coming out of the University of Tennessee. Those guys aren't polished products, but they're freak athletes, especially Pierce Jr. Clocked in at the fastest 40 time among defensive linemen, a sub 4.5. And he looked like he played a little faster than that during his senior year. I think his junior or senior year in the University of Tennessee. The guy was a disruptor in the pass game. He is what you would call an embodiment of a speed rusher. They're going to be seeing a lot of Jaylen Walker and James Pierce Jr. going forward. How is Kelvin Banks and Talise Fuaga going to handle guys that can be not only intense, powerful, but also quick off the line? Now, Talise Fuaga struggled a little bit with speed rushers last year. Didn't really give up a lot of sacks, but that's more attributed to the play call in hand and getting the ball, and he who shall not be named, Mr. Vehicle, getting the ball out of his hands in certain crucial situations, or Spencer Rattler getting the ball out of his hands in certain situations. Those guys had to prove that they could be the next great, tackle duo in the National Football League, because the Saints haven't had anything close to that since Ryan Ramczyk and Teron Armstead, when they were ranked number 3 and number 2, respectively, amongst Pro Football Focus. Now, if you want to take some stock into PFF, by all means, I kind of do. At the same time, I don't. But it wasn't just PFF. It was a consensus among many reporters around NFL media that listed Ryan Ramczyk and Teron Armstead kind of high as one of the better tackle duos in the league because of how reliable and consistent they were in protecting Drew Brees. Now, do I imagine that some play calls kind of helped them in that regard? Absolutely. But it was a married effect that really worked well, and it helped propel the Saints to success. That's the type of expectation that I have for these two young offensive tackles going forward. And I think they're in a great position to really do that under a new offensive mind that is able to tailor his schemes or his play calls to the dominant traits of his players or dominant traits of his skill guys. So I want to see how this works out. I think it'll work out well, obviously, but this is the NFL, and nothing is ever guaranteed, no matter what opinion or how you slide with your opinion. But no matter what, they have to be locked down. I'm saying? They have to be a lockdown guy, so for the next 4, maybe even 5 years plus. Speaking of lockdown guys, we go back to the defensive side of the ball. The New Orleans Saints secondary has a lot of questions after Marshon Lattimore got traded to the Washington Commanders. Now it wasn't a move that was expected? No. Was it necessary? Yes. Marshon Lattimore will forever be regarded as one of the best Saints corners in franchise history for good reason. But his consistent issue with his hamstring made him less. The best ability is availability for Marshon Lattimore. Even during his little half season with the Washington Commanders, he didn't really see a lot of time on the field. He hopes to change that narrative going into his first full off season with the Commanders and his first official season as a starter, a full-time guy with the Washington Commanders. But with that departure of Marshon Lattimore, it leaves a void on the opposite side of the field. Now, we know Kool-Aid McKinstry most likely is going to be on the opposite side. Alontae Taylor, he's been seeing snaps not only on the outside, on the opposite field of Kool-Aid McKinstry, but he's seeing, time still in the slot during key third downs or walkthrough situations during OTAs and minicamp. So I imagine that they're still going to be looking for that guy that's going to play opposite of Kool-Aid McKinstry on the right side or on the left side. They need a guy that is going to be, hey, you know what? Hey, go guard that guy. Go shut him down. Get in his face. Strap him up. Things of that nature. Now, they've also lost Paulson Adebo. Paulson Adebo was traded to the new. Actually, no, he wasn't traded. He didn't get signed back. And he was free to sign whoever. He went to the New York Giants. Now, he said thank you to New Orleans before Anthony Davis did. Ross Jackson. But no. So they lost Marshon Lattimore. They lost Paulson Adebo. They lost their top 2 corners. And there's a lot of question marks that are needing to be answered there. Kool-Aid McKinstry hopes to be the answer for one, and this next rookie looks to be the answer for the other. This is Louisville cornerback Quincy Riley. Quincy Riley was the 131st pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. 131st overall. He comes to us as one of the 2 better players Louisville had during their 2024 campaign. What he wants to do is he wants to lock down the opposite side and be that replacement for Marshawn Lattimore. Now, this guy, I believe, is one of the better, ready NFL ready starters for the New Orleans Saints. Now, he has to prove that. Before we get into it, I want to thank everybody who's still filing in here, enjoying their morning with your boy, Who Dat Davis, as they're driving to work, getting ready to punch in their hours, punching their time clocks, get that money however they can. I see down here in the comment section, my boy OG said we got copyrighted. Hey, it is what it is. If we get copyrighted, we get copyrighted. But what we're going to do going forward is we're gonna do some adjustments here. Now, I wanted to be a little different with my live streams and let's take small breaks, and I like to give you guys a little snippets of what some of our guys are some guys that are kind of namestays here. I want you guys to know more about our players. So I try to find clips, of certain guys for the podcast I do certain days, or videos I do certain days. I'm gonna try and find some ones that aren't as copyrighted as much, probably on some different platforms, but we'll look into that. So I appreciate y'all telling me that I got copyrighted. Look, YouTube, chill, man. It's only a couple minutes long. It ain't that deep. Okay. I'm not trying to make money off this, at least right now. Maybe in the future we got that conversation, but for right now, I'm just trying to have fun with my guys, man. Chill out, YouTube. All right, it's not that serious. It really ain't. But with all that being said, man, look, let's get back to this talk. Let's get back to the topic at hand. Lockdown Riley. This guy was locked down when he was on the field at Louisville. He played in 55 career games with 36 starts in 6 seasons with Louisville. Now, we've made a lot about Tyler Shough playing 7 years in college football. Quincy Riley played in 6, but he transferred to Louisville from Middle Tennessee. He got his break at a higher conference school and in a more athletic, more intense conference, and he did not disappoint. 10 stops for loss. Look, that's great. From 2019, 2021, 159 tackles. Really? And since 2019? Now that's good. 10 stops for loss, 2.5 sacks, 15 interceptions, 19, 20, 21 in a 3-year span. Now that's ball production. Overall, that's ball production. But what he does bring is, but he's not as vocal as certain other guys are. But when he's on the field, his play speaks for itself. Quincy Riley has, I would say, the easiest path out of most other rookies in terms of trying to land a starting job with the New Orleans Saints. He can play press man. He can also play some zone. He has that versatile skill set. I haven't yet to see him play in the slot, but what he does bring is play recognition. And a great tackler, too. That was another issue that the New Orleans Saints have faced over the last couple of seasons. They can't get ball carriers on the ground, whether it be giving up yards after contact or yards after the catch. There was a lot of missing fundamentals that the Saints have needed to get back to some way, somehow. And guys like Quincy Riley here are paramount in doing that. Quincy Riley barely misses a tackle when it's seen in front of him. He triggers. He wraps up. I don't know what it is with DBs that like to try to throw their shoulder into a guy that's obviously bigger and stronger than them. But use your arms, wrap up, do something other than trying to just throw your shoulder, Marcus Williams. Yeah, I had a flashback to the 2017 playoff. Sorry. But yeah, look, like I said, Quincy Riley has, I would say, the easiest path to getting to the National Football League's starting job with the New Orleans Saints. And that's a good thing. But what can he do with that situation? What can he do with that opportunity? He's also got guys like Isaac Yiadom. When he came in relief for Marshawn Lattimore, who was dealing with injury, he looked like he was going to be a pretty solid player. Excuse me, a pretty solid player. Backing up Marshawn Lattimore. Now that was under a different coaching philosophy. That was under Dennis Allen. I don't know what he's going to look like under Brandon Staley. I honestly don't. But with that unknown, there's nothing saying that Quincy Riley can't jump ahead of him on the depth chart. This guy measured pretty well during the combine. He looked pretty good during the Reese's Bowl. The Saints love those guys who play in the Reese's Senior Bowl. Boy, I don't know why, but it is what it is. It is what it is with that. But so far, but what I've seen at Quincy Riley, I love his game. He reminds me so much of Marshawn Lattimore with the ball production of a Paulson Adebo without all the penalties. He wasn't one of the more penalized players in a college football league, which is a good thing. The Saints need to cut down on penalties in a bad way. They give up too many DPIs and clutch moments, and it's cost them games. Not just last season with the Atlanta Falcons and beyond that, but even seasons before that. Now, overall, they weren't the most heavily penalized team in the National Football League. They were kind of mid-tier. But you wouldn't know that if you were just looking at the games itself. If you weren't trying to compare statistics. Excuse me. But it looked like they were one of the worst teams that couldn't get out of their own way defensively, because they always panicked in high pressure moments. So as much as I loved Paulson Adebo, being a real good ball hawk as a corner, he was a feast or famine guy that we couldn't that he had to go. My guy had to go. All right, it is what it is. But I'm gonna miss Marshawn Lattimore. Will I miss Paulson Adebo? I don't know. He did give us some clutch moments. His rookie year, that elite one-handed interception in the season-ending game against the Atlanta Falcons will forever live in my brain as one of the more memorable moments. That gave Ryan his little farewell tour over to Indianapolis to play with the coach for a season before he got benched. It was great. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Now, I will say that Paulson Adebo was a kind of a victim his first 2 seasons because he was coming out of a situation where COVID was kind of rampant, in 2020. So I did it again. We're still live. Look, I don't know what's going on, man. Look, YouTube, I'm not even playing clips right now. I'm not. Like, if it's an issue, come on, man. What's going on? What is it? Like, what am I doing wrong, YouTube? You know what I'm saying? What am I doing wrong here? Come on, man. Come on. Now, we're going to get into some other players here in a little bit. But once again, I want to thank everybody who's choosing to tune in to the B&G Breakdown podcast and choosing me to be their voice as they go into work today, try to clock in their extra hours. We're going to go a little rapid fire here. I didn't plan on doing this, but because YouTube is being problematic with this whole copyright thing, I don't have the time. I don't have the patience for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to rapid fire with some of these other guys because these are more guys that are going to have a harder time making the roster anyway. We're going to answer some questions about these guys and see what they got going on. And then we're going to get up out of here. So in about 20 minutes or so, we're going to try and wrap this up so you guys can get on with your day. And I'm going to try to talk to YouTube and send them an email. You know what I'm saying? But the next guy we have here is another guy that's on the defensive side of the ball, but he plays safety. When it comes to stopping the run, that is a key factor for Brandon Staley's 3-4 defense. From his defensive lineman being able to hold up at the point of attack, hold up against double teams, to guys in the secondary being able to keep their eyes keyed in to where the football is and trigger downfield, and they see a run play developing. And this is a guy that's done that, pretty consistently during his time at the University of Virginia. This is Jonas Sanker. Jonas Sanker is a run thumper. During his time, he says, "No run shall pass," say Jonas Sanker. He brings run-stopping emphasis to the New Orleans Saints. And that is a thing that I believe is going to help him propel himself to the starting lineup with the New Orleans Saints as a dime back. I think he's going to be competing with, Jordan Howden for that dime back or rotational spot, for good reason. Or it could be Matthew and Justin Reed as one duo, and it could be Jonas Sanker and Jordan Howden as another duo. We don't know how it's ultimately going to play out, but what I can say is the chances of this guy making the roster are just as good. I'll pull up his profile real quick so you guys can see that what he brings is going to be absolutely paramount. Jonas Sanker was a guy that led his team in tackles and tackles for loss over his last 2 seasons with the University of Virginia. He ranked 6th in the league in total tackles per game as a safety. That's wild. VirginiaSports.com has everything on Jonas Sanker. This guy is one of 5. He was voted team captain in each of season. So that all 12 games at safety, he led the team in 2024 with total tackles in 98, with solo tackles in 65. He had 8.5 tackles for loss with 2 fumble recoveries. He led the ACC, the conference ACC, and ranked 7th in FBS in solo tackles per game. That's all from the safety position. So what you guys got here is, I would say, a good complementary piece to a free safety, whether it be Jordan Howden or Tyrann Mathieu, maybe even Justin Reed. A guy that could come downhill, who's not afraid to get his hat down in the box, who's not afraid of challenging any running back or fullback, whatever the case may be. He triggers, and you'll see him shot out like a missile, like a missile. I believe Jonas Sanker has a good chance of making this roster. They've already released, a guy who is making his rounds around Saints Twitter, Trey Fluellen. He got released, and I think that's not much an indictment on him, as it's more of a nod to Jonas Sanker. This is a guy that I believe who's also made plays. This guy's made plays during his time already in OTAs and minicamp. He's already picked off, Tyler Shuck. He's already picked off Spencer Rattler. He's already got interceptions against both guys that are vying for that QB1 spot this year. He's showed great range. He's going to show great playmaking ability. Now he has to be better about, being in zone coverage. He has to be better about, using those instincts to play with better range. But it's hard to do that. The best DB or best safety we've had that's played with elite range and cover skills, like ball help skills, was Marcus Williams. And we know how Marcus Williams played out, not only during his final years in New Orleans, but also during his time with the Baltimore Ravens, who signed up to a lucrative deal at the time. He's on his way out the door because he couldn't stay healthy. But this is the type of guy who I believe you can build around in your secondary. Pair him with a Quincy Riley, pair him with a Kool-Aid McKinstry, with the young and uprising leader in Alontae Taylor. This guy loves to bring, that downhill smoke. He'll get in your face afterwards. He'll celebrate with you guys, no matter if he's on the field or on the sideline. And that is another thing that I've seen out of these players, that they love high energy, and they bring it every play from whistle to whistle. Absolutely, it's encouraging. So if you're looking to get back to stopping the run, Jonas Sanker is going to be one of those guys that they look to, maybe as a dime back, for the New Orleans Saints. Hey, look, I appreciate you, man. Look, I appreciate you. Like I said, we're going to touch bases soon. For right now, I got to hurry up in the stream so I can talk to YouTube about getting these copyright things, off my live, because they wilding right now. They're doing the most. But I appreciate you. I'm going to give you that mod soon, boy. Hey, keep it locked here. We're gonna be doing more content, kind of consistently. I'm kind of getting back into the flow of things. I just got back, late last week. I'm trying to be a little more consistent. You see some of my other lives, then go check them out. We'll leave your thoughts down in the comment section. But I need guys who are gonna help me get the word out. Some way, somehow. We're also gonna be doing videos again pretty soon. And right now we're still waiting for the reveal of the new helmet for the New Orleans Saints. I don't know when it's supposed to be dropping. I'm hoping that it is soon. Oh, breaking news, breaking news. The New Orleans Saints will be posting the reveal of the new helmets at 10 a.m., which means we got less than 45 minutes before the Saints drop their new helmet reveal. We're probably going to do like a short little video, short YouTube short, and post it to the channel. Leave y'all thoughts in that comment section. Look, I'm excited, man. I'm telling you, I'm excited. I don't know what it's going to be, but man, I'm hoping it's white and gold. There's just so much uncertainty with this team. You never know what you're going to get. And speaking of never knowing what you're going to get, there are a couple of guys here who you don't know what you're going to get. Especially one guy who's coming into a crowded room. When Kellen Moore came over and Doug Nussmeier came over, they brought a run blocking tight end with them in Jack Stoll. And Juwan Johnson hopes to flourish in this new scheme because this scheme that Kellen Moore seems to run, it typically favors tight ends that are able to be pass catchers. Gerald Everett is the most recent example. Dallas Goedert, he's up there in years, but he's benefited from this scheme. Even during his time with the Dallas Cowboys, Jake Ferguson was a guy that really benefited. And Dalton Schultz, he's benefited from Kellen Moore's offensive mind. Juwan Johnson hopes to be another recipient of that fountain of knowledge from Kellen Moore. There's also, Foster Moreau. He had one of his better seasons of his career during the last remnants of the Dennis Allen era. Now he's coming off a pretty significant injury, but he looks to be raring to go for the start of training camp. Looks like he'll be if not fully there, then most of the way there. So he'll most likely will be healthy for the start of the NFL season. Then there's still some unknown questions with Taysom Hill. What's Taysom Hill's situation? Is he going to be, is he going to, end up going to Denver and reuniting with Sean Payton? Are they going to move his money? Or going to what's Taysom Hill's situation? We don't have much clarity on that. And with so many moving parts, with so many seemingly active hands in the bowl in the tight end room, this rookie tight end has an uphill battle. This is Maliki Monteval. Maliki Monteval transferred to UCLA for his final year of eligibility in college football, and he seemed pretty productive in his first year with that team, his first and last year with that team. Now, what he has shown is not only his ability to be a reliable pass catcher in the short and medium game, in the pass game. He's also been on reports saying that he is going to be a willing blocker. He wants to be that guy that they can count on to be that end line point of attack blocker, get his hand down in the dirt, and help out in the run game, or be that extra pass blocker to give, struggling offensive tackles help, whether it be, Kelvin Banks if he ends up struggling, or even, Talise Fuaga if he ends up having another quote unquote slump in his sophomore season. Now that is an encouraging sign because the Saints have not had a promising, a more reliable blocking tight end, a guy that's willing to do the dirty work, since Josh Hill retired after his 2019 campaign. Y'all know how good and how well respected Josh Hill is. During that successful run from 2017 to 2019, a lot of the reason is because Josh Hill was doing, those extra steps to cement the block or get that key block. The more recent one was 2019 when Thomas was having his Offensive Player of the Year campaign. I remember that game well against the Arizona Cardinals. Thomas catches a slant. Josh Hill is running downfield, putting safeties on their back, allowing Thomas to get extra yak for yards. 2019 against the Chicago Bears, when Teddy Bridgewater was still subbing in for Drew Brees because he suffered a thumb injury against the Rams. There was a lot of things Josh Hill was doing that game, not just as a receiving threat to back up as to fill in for Jared Cook, who was down with injury. He was also a guy that was getting that extra block to give Teddy Bridgewater time to make the plays he needs to downfield. You know, it's guys like that, those selfless guys, the guys who don't really care about being in the spotlight as much so long as the team is having some moniker of success. That's the type of tight end that is missing, even with Foster Moreau having statistically his better season of his career. You know, Taysom Hill's not really going to do that. He's not really the blocking tight end. He's a do-it-all guy that can make plays, you know, and rejuvenate and spark some life in the Saints offense. Juwan Johnson's not really a blocker. He's more like a big body receiver that was just put there to be that, you know, the guy that works out of the Y position. Someone needs to step up and be that guy to be that cementing block. Jack Stoll's done that plenty. He's always been attached to Kellen Moore, whether it be at the Chargers or Cowboys or most recently during his time with the Philadelphia Eagles. He's seen some snaps, some quality snaps when it comes to the run game. You know, that extra guy, that extra big body, when it comes to doing those RPOs, those inside zones, those outside zones. Jack Stoll was one of those guys that can move a linebacker, that can move a slot DB that's trying to come downhill and make a play. Jack Stoll's done that. So you got Juwan Johnson, who's for quote unquote, for all intents and purposes, tight end 1, to Foster Moreau, looking to come back from injury and build off the season he's had, to still unknown variables with Taysom Hill. You know, if he's still here, what does that look like? Even Jack Stoll, you know, he's made plays even during his OTA and minicamps. He's had a couple of nice plays during 7-on-7 drills. They haven't had many 11-on-11s yet, but during 7-on-7, he's had a couple of nice catches from, you know, Hunter Deckers, Jay Kaner, Tyler Shuck, most recently Spencer Rattler. You know, so how does Maliki Monteval separate himself from the rest of the competition and bring value into the eyes of Kellen Moore that sparks a light bulb in Kellen Moore's head, that sparks a light bulb in Doug Nussmeier's head? Because Doug Nussmeier is going to have, I would say, a bias towards Jack Stoll when it comes down to those two, for all intents and purposes. Can he do good on his word and be a good inline blocking tight end? Because if you do that, and if you can show some special teams value, because if you can't find yourself on the offense right away, that special teams is where you're going to make yourself known. It's always going to be special teams. Can you make your way to that unit and find yourself getting valuable snaps some way, somehow? That's always going to be, you know, that find out phase. You know, for a while, Marcus Williams did it. For a while, Taysom Hill did it. For a while, Juwan Johnson did it. You know, I can go on and on with this list. So Maliki Monteval has an uphill battle. But I would say his game is kind of similar to Jack Stoll if he can get that run blocking piece figured out. And if that's the case, then you've got a young rookie on a really cheap contract that can give you similar production, if not better, than Jack Stoll. And I think that's going to be the key difference there. It's all going to be about his development. But I say that's a fair comparison to make as far as right now is concerned. But speaking of comparisons, we got one more rookie here. Then we're going to wrap it up. And I'm going to talk to YouTube down there in the emails. We got one more rookie here that's speaking of comparisons on the defensive side of the ball. This guy was a 7th round pick, the last pick for the Saints. This guy was a 3-time captain. He's made multiple stops throughout his collegiate career. His last one was in Syracuse. But this guy brought leadership. He's brought intensity. And he's brought great play smarts. And I would say he has just about as good of a chance as any to make the roster, given that Carl Granderson, a guy who was undrafted coming out of Wyoming, he submitted himself as a starter on the Saints defensive line. And that is 7th round draft pick for Fadil Diggs. No, he's not related to Stephon Diggs, at least I don't think. But that last name, don't get triggered, my Saints fans. It's okay. 2017 is long and gone. He can't hurt us no more. right? He's back with the New England Patriots, who I think the Saints play this year. If that's the case, BTA. But we'll let the game speak for itself when the time comes. But for the time being, he can't hurt us. So don't let this last name, trigger y'all. It's okay, right? But Fidel Diggs coming out of Syracuse, this guy, he's been a 3-time captain out of his last 4 seasons of college football. He's made key moments happen wherever he's went. He's got some familiarity, with the Saints defensive line coach and Bo Davis. They've had some talks, you know what I'm saying? And Fidel Diggs, his build is similar to Carl Granderson. Now, I don't know what his chances are of making this roster because it's a stacked room, one of the more stacked position groups the Saints have right now. From Chase Young, Cam Jordan, the obvious two. I just mentioned Carl Granderson, but who else is on that line? You've got Nathan Shepard. You've got Brian Brzee. You've got Colin Saunders. You know what I'm saying? You got a whole slew of guys there that you're going to have to try and, climb up the depth chart against. If you already mentioned in the last show that Colin Saunders is looking like he's going to be the odd man out with Vernon Broughton there. I mentioned Vernon Broughton in the last show. That's why I'm not bringing him up today. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to get other guys to the spotlight. But Fidel Diggs is an interesting prospect. He comes in as this 6'3", 6'4" guy, this 260-pound guy. But he has I would say he has pretty good to potentially great tools as a pass rusher. He comes from a 3-4 scheme at the University of Syracuse. So he has some familiarity with the type of defensive scheme that Brandon Staley likes to employ. I think that'll serve him well when the pass come on. Now, when those pass come on, it's going to be on him to make, those places like, okay, I can hang. It's like, then get the attention of the coaching staff. But it's going to be an uphill battle. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is cemented in stone with these guys in the National Football League. Anything is possible. Now, I would get into some undrafted guys, but like I said, I'm already dealing with YouTube, trying to silence your boy because I'm trying to play some clips, but it is what it is. So right now, we're going to get up out of here, y'all. But I appreciate the 9 of y'all who came in for this past hour, 15 minutes, to talk shop, talk Saints football with your boy, man. Look, tomorrow, I was to say the next day, maybe the day after, we're going to talk about some make or break players. Who are these guys? Well, which Saints players are going to be looked at as if they play well, that the Saints team has a chance, or they don't play well, then they can go ahead and consider themselves top 5, in terms of draft position for 2026. We're going to look at those type of players or reasons why, and it's going to be a fun conversation because there's a lot of passion that's going to come out in that segment, man. But I'll see y'all next time. I will probably do this Thursday or even Friday, or so. Look out for all my social media. Like the date and times are going to be listed. If y'all over there on Twitter, I got my official Twitter page at that Black and Gold Breakdown Podcast, BGB Pod, at BGB Pod over there on Twitter, or my personal Twitter page at Dax Davis. If you're over on the Facebook page, check out the official Facebook page at facebook.com/Black and Gold Breakdown. I do have an Instagram page, but that's more for personal use, to trying to promote the channel a little bit. But keep it locked here. In the next 30 minutes, I will be posting my reaction to the unveiling of the brand new helmets, the alternative helmets for the New Orleans Saints. They just released a statement saying that they're going to be revealing it at 10 a.m. Central. It's going to be a fun time. I cannot wait. So I'll go ahead and get that ready to post for you as soon as it drops. Keep it locked here on this channel. And as always, y'all don't know, you will know that over here, we bleed black and gold until we are dead and cold. I'll see y'all next time. Hey, who that, y'all? Who that?